What's going on, boys? It's your resident cheek clapper and homie Dapper YGO Senpai here, and today I'm bringing you one of my favorite decks of all time, Mayakashi. Really fits the theme because it's October and spooky season, so I really wanted to bring this to you guys. It's getting some amazing new support coming up here, and I believe it's Magnificent Maidens. We're getting a new Link 3 and a trap card that says that your opponent cannot play the game. So this is just to get an idea of what it is that we want to be playing for now, and what I would take out, put in, what have you, once that new support does come out. So without further ado, I'm going to get right into it. Before I do, just make sure that we like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, all those good things. I know you probably think that you're subscribed, but you're not. I just keep getting recommended to you, so just double check that for me. And without further ado, I will get right on into this. So, to start with, we are playing 3 copies of Heijun, the Winged Mayakashi, right here. So what this card does, for anybody that doesn't know, is when it is normal or special summoned, I can special summon out a Mayakashi monster from my deck to my side of the field, which is really good on any monster, but especially on him, because the monster that I'm going to be special summoning out of the deck is 3 copies of Daki, the Graceful Mayakashi. This is a level 2 tuner, partnered with my level 1 Heijun. Is going to be able to start off my Synchro plays, to be able to get into our Synchro 3 Mayakashi monster, which we will see later on in the video. The other amazing thing about Daki right here is that when she is in the graveyard and a monster from the extra deck that is a Mayakashi monster is special summoned from the extra deck, it can special summon itself from the graveyard. What's crazy about that is not a hard once per turn, so you can just keep doing that to keep Synchro climbing into your big boss Synchro monster. So that is really, really fantastic. Next, we are playing 3 copies of Yuki Musume, the Ice Mayakashi. This is a great consistency card for the deck. Really helps you make stronger end boards and things like that. What a lot of people have been doing is cutting this card down to 1 or 2. I do not agree with that at all. I think the fact that it can special summon itself from your hand or graveyard when you control another Mayakashi monster is just too good. Not to mention, when it does do that, it can foolish not just a Mayakashi monster, but a zombie monster, period, into the graveyard to help you kickstart some other zombie plays. So that's also really good. I just can't see myself cutting it. I suppose if you want to cut one copy of it, you could. I just can't see myself doing it. To help get play started, we have 1 copy of Yasha, the Skeletal Mayakashi. What he does is it can discard another Mayakashi monster from your hand to the graveyard to special summon himself. It's a zombie deck. We want our cards in the graveyard, so that's obviously really good. And speaking of having our cards in the graveyard, we're playing 1 copy of Sheifu, the Wheeled Mayakashi. What this card does is when it's normal or special summoned, I can special summon another Mayakashi card from the graveyard. So zombie deck, there should usually be some Mayakashi cards in the graveyard as it is. So this card really comes in clutch, especially if you're in a situation where you got interrupted or anything like that. Being able to use his effect to keep your plays going, really good. And that is it for the Mayakashi monsters. Now on to the Mayakashi spells and traps. For our spells and traps, we are playing 3 copies of Mayakashi Return. What this card does, it is a Rhoda or Foolish for a Mayakashi card. So it is not just a Rhoda or Foolish for a Mayakashi monster, it is a Mayakashi card. This can search your Mayakashi spells and traps, which is really good for the new trap that's coming out here in a couple of months. Being able to search that is going to be really good. But for now, one of the cards that we are sending to the graveyard, if we are going to go the spell and trap route, is Mayakashi Winter. Mayakashi Winter, for anybody that doesn't know what this does, you can activate it as a continuous spell. While it's on the field, your opponent loses 100 attack and defense for each Mayakashi monster with a different name in your graveyard. But aside from that, you can activate one of its 2 effects while it is on field. If you can send itself and a Mayakashi monster from your field to the graveyard to draw 1 card, which is okay. If you're having some trouble getting to the board state that you want, then that could really help you get there. Other than that, when it is in the graveyard, you can banish itself and a zombie monster, so it doesn't have to be specifically a Mayakashi, to special summon a zombie monster from your graveyard, so that can also be really helpful as well, especially if you're trying to put enough damage on board to go for game. And lastly, the 1 trap that we would be searching for now, Mayakashi Mayhem. Mayakashi Mayhem is really good, so for anybody that doesn't know what the Synchro monsters do, the Synchro monsters themselves, they go in order from Synchro 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11, and once you're at the 11, if the 11 gets dealt with, destroyed, sent to the graveyard, then the 9 will special summon itself out and be able to pop a monster, and so on and so forth. They have different effects, and I'll get into all of the effects later. But when one of those effects happens, you can activate one of the effects of Mayakashi Mayhem if this is already face up on your side of the field. One of the effects that you can activate is draw one card. You can also activate the effect to set a Mayakashi spell or trap directly from your deck set for itself. You can also send one monster with the lowest attack that your opponent controls to the graveyard, so that can help you break boards, especially if they're trying to interact with you on your turn. And you can also inflict 800 damage to your opponent, which is just cracked, because especially with the time rules that we have going on and things like that, I know a lot of people are complaining about that. So this card can just really help you take a couple of games in time, and it's just a small thing, but it does help. So that is it for the spells and traps. And on to just our zombie package. We are playing 3 copies of Unizombie. For anybody that doesn't know what this card does, it is a Foolish Burial. You can also discard a zombie from your hand to your graveyard, which, again, zombie deck, you want your zombies in your graveyard, so that's really good. It's able to pump up its level by 1 or 2, which also helps you when you're trying to get into your Synchro plays for your Mayakashi cards. One of the cards that you may want to Foolish is 3 copies of Mizuki. This card, when it's in your graveyard, you can banish it from your graveyard, especially summon another zombie from your graveyard, so that's really nice. Excuse me, one of the normal summons of the deck, another normal summon of the deck, just 1 copy of Gozuki. This card's Foolish Burial when it's summoned, so that's awesome. We have 1 copy of Shiranui Solitaire. We're only playing 1. The Solitaire is mostly to get into our copy of Unizombie, or if we need to be able to start our Synchro plays for our Mayakashi engine. This will also work for that too. Just tribute itself to summon out Heijun, then use Heijun's effect to summon Daki, and then start Synchro climbing that way. We're also playing the 1 copy of Glow Up Bloom to get to our Doom King Baylordrock while Zombie King is on the field, or Zombie World, I'm sorry. Speaking of Zombie World, to get to Zombie World, we have our 1 copy of Neko World Banshee. We have 1 copy of Vampire Fraulein to help blank battle phases and get around taking too much damage, especially if we are in a time situation. This card can really come up. And we have our 1 copy of Doom King Baylordrock, which can special summon itself each standby phase so long as Zombie World is on face up on the field, so it's really strong. He's a monster negate. He just does a lot of work. So want to be playing at least 1 of him. I have considered possibly playing 2 just for the consistency of being able to see him, but I think 1 is fine. So moving on, I did say we're playing Zombie World. So we're playing 1 copy of Terraforming and 2 copies of Zombie World. We're playing plenty of ways to see this card between Necroworld Banshee and Terraforming, and there are 1,000,001 ways to get Necroworld Banshee in the graveyard to activate its effect. So running 2 so that you can possibly see 1 in your opening hand, and then being able to search it with 2 other cards is really good. Zombie World is just a blowout against Flunder and other decks that are really reliant on their types. So that's just way too good. Especially since we're going to be pairing it with Super Poly in this deck, spoiler alert, so that's just really good. And moving on, speaking of our board breakers like Super Poly, we have 3 copies of Dark Ruler No More. This deck does have a bit of a problem trying to break through boards, especially if we have like heavy negate boards, heavy interaction boards. This deck just kind of has a problem with getting around those, so one of the best ways that we can help deal with that is Dark Ruler No More. I know there are a lot of players that are playing around Dark Ruler No More because the format kind of demands that you play it, but it's still just way too good. Being able to only have to deal with 1 or 2 points of interaction versus the whole board is just way better than having to deal with the whole board. So playing 3 maxed out for sure. Speaking of addressing boards, I did allude to it earlier. We're playing 3 copies of Super Polymerization. Being able to flip Zombie World and then yeet your opponent's board out of existence is way too good this format, especially in a format with fusions. So I would probably cut these 3 out for the new Mayakashi trap that literally says that your opponent cannot special summon, as long as you control the Mayakashi card, I believe. So that's just way too good. I think Super Poly at that point is just way too much of a neg once you get into the nitty gritty of it and trying to set up your plays. So Super Poly at 3 for now is still really strong. So that is it for our board breakers. Lastly, for our one-ofs, our power cards, we're playing 1 copy of Monster Reborn. A lot of the effects trigger once they're special summoned from the graveyard, so that's just way too good. A lot of effects trigger once they're in the graveyard, so 1 copy of Foolish Burial. And to help us stay uninterrupted, we have our 1 copy of Called by the Grave. It's for decks like this that I wish this card was at 3, but for decks like Tier Limits, I really wish the card would be banned, so it really just depends. So for this deck, I think this card is a godsend. So moving on to our extra deck. Our extra deck is really tight and concise at the moment. It gets a little better with the new support. For now, we are running, for our links, 1 copy of Yuki-Onna, the Absolute Zero Mayakashi. This card just does so much work. It's a monster negate, helps blank out opponent's monster's attacks. So when you do that, it really helps you go for game and things like that. You know, especially needing to be able to close out our games quickly and precisely. It's really good helping you get there. Next, we have 2 copies of Yuki-Onna, the Ice Mayakashi. Again, another tool to help you OTK. This is able to have an opponent's monster if they try to target a Mayakashi on your side of the field. So Imperm, Effect Veiler, things like that. They would actually have to target this, or they're going to wind up being in a lot of trouble. And lastly, for our links, we have our Vampire Sucker, which is really good in this deck because you can special summon a zombie from your graveyard to the side of the field to be able to trigger its draw 1, which is really good instead of having to use its own effect to special summon from your opponent's graveyard. Of course, if your opponent does get to their turn and you still have this on your field, and they special summon something from your graveyard, then you can trigger this to draw 1 on their turn too, so that's really nice. And that is it for our links. For our fusions, our super poly targets, we're playing 1 copy of Garura. Garura is just way too good this format. And if it does get addressed and sent from the field to the graveyard, we can draw 1, so that really helps boost the consistency of the deck as well. And of course, this wouldn't be a super poly zombie deck without Drago Necrosoul. Drago Necro Nethersoul. This card just puts in way too much work, being such a large body when it's summoned, and you most likely used your opponent's field with Zombie World on the field, because for anybody that doesn't know, this card requires 2 zombie monsters, so being able to super poly 2 zombie monsters from your opponent's side of the field to the graveyard to summon this guy really puts a lot of pressure on them to try and address the board. So I would not change anything about that. If anything, we may consider cutting one of the Link 2 Yuki-Onnas to add another super poly target, but I'm really have been fine with just running those. So next, we can get into our synchros. So for our first synchro, we have the level 3 Wheeled Mayakashi Synchro. This card is what you start your plays with when you summon your Heijun and your Daki. All of them have the same effect. So say the Synchro 5 was on the field and it got hit with removal, it special summons itself. Same thing goes if the Synchro 7's on the field and this is in the graveyard, then it special summons itself. So they all do the same thing, and then they all have a different secondary effect. So this one's secondary effect is that you cannot be destroyed by battle for the rest of the turn, which is really nice. Next, we have our Tsujigomo, the Poisonous Mayakashi. This one right here is especially powerful. Sometimes I've considered against tier limits just sitting on this, or not against tier limits, but other decks just sitting on this card. You don't want to sit on this card against tier limits at all. I'm sorry, because this card's secondary effect is when it special summons itself, it mills the top 3 from your opponent's deck, which is really good. We see a lot of Runic running around, ruining people's days, so being able to thin out their deck a little bit and kind of get them closer to running out of resources can be pretty good. And I misspoke earlier. I wouldn't sit on this one. I would sit on this one right here. So if it's removed, this gets special summoned back. But Tengu, the Winged Mayakashi, are at level 7. Right here, of course, does the same thing. And then if this is special summon from the graveyard, I can destroy 1 spell or trap my opponent controls, which is really nice, especially if my opponent is on some sort of floodgatey strategy or something like that. Having an archetype out is really helpful. Next, we're playing our Synchro 9. our Yoko, the Graceful Mayakashi. So this one being our Synchro 9, obviously it is just below our Synchro 11. But anywho, when this one is special summoned from the graveyard, I can destroy one monster card, my opponent controls. So that is, of course, wonderful, being able to start interrupting my opponent's board, especially once they've gone and dealt with the only one of Synchro that we have, the Goyotaro, the Skeletal Mayakashi. You can consider running 2 of this, but I don't know why you would, because once you get here, it can only go back down. If there were a Synchro 13, then yes, you consider running another copy of this. Maybe you could make the argument to run another copy of it, just so that you can get back to the height and then run back down again. So if you want to do that, you can. But other than that, that is it for the Synchros, and that is it for the deck profile, guys. So go ahead, comment down below, let me know what you think. Leave any suggestions for future videos, any ways that you think I could have made this one better, or anything like that, any ratios you would run. Are you excited for the new Mayakashi support? Oh, also one thing I forgot to mention, as far as the extra deck, I would just cut these 2 Super Poly targets and add 2 copies of the Link 3 in once the Link 3 comes out as well. The Link 3 goes crazy. But that is it, guys. It's your resident cheek clapper, homie dapper, YGO Senpai, signing out.